Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We are ready now for Parshat Balak. We have 8 lessons that we can learn, practical lessons, make them part of our lives. Here we go. We'll start from the very beginning. Vayar Balak, we have the beginning of the Parsha. If you look through Parshat Balak, you will notice, as the Chafetz Chaim points out, Ein hafsaka achat. There is no break in the entire Parsha. Lo ptucha velo stuma. You don't have, if you look at the Sefer Torah, you usually have openings that go a full line or part of a line. And here you have no spaces at all. There's nothing to separate between the various things that happen in the Parsha. Why? Says the Chafetz Chaim, Ki amna Bilam navi haya. It's true. Bilam, we're going to have the whole story with Bilam in this week's Parsha. And Bilam was a Navi. He received prophecy from Hashem. Divrei hanavua lo hishpiu alav. The problem is the prophecy that he was getting from Hashem. He was having this communication from Hashem himself, and it didn't have any influence on him. He didn't reflect upon them. He didn't learn anything from it. The Chafetz Chaim points out, according to our Chachamim, why are there breaks in the Torah? They were litin revach l'Moshe litbonim parsha. The whole idea was, as Moshe was learning the Torah, as Hashem was teaching him things, Moshe Rabbeinu took breaks after parts of each parsha in order to think, to internalize, to reflect, to make it a part of who he was. That is why we have those breaks. And by the way, that's why we have the breaks for ourselves. This parsha, because Bilam was not a person who reflected on the prophecy that he was getting from Hashem, the whole parsha continues with zero break whatsoever, because there's no purpose for the break, because the communication that Hashem was giving to Bilam wasn't being used to pause and reflect and internalize anything. This concept teaches us such an important lesson. It's going to be lesson number 1. We open the Chumash, we listen to the Baal Koreh reading on Shabbos. Between the aliyos, we maybe will learn something else. But the concept is that as we hear Kriyat Torah, or as we learn our own Torah, we are constantly pausing and thinking and contemplating and understanding how can we apply what we have just learned to our lives. As we say in the Shema, Dvarim vavav v'hayu advarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. The words of the Torah are not just some kind of intellectual pursuit, but it's supposed to touch us deeply and spiritually. And in order for that to happen, it's not going to happen automatically. It's not some process of osmosis. You have to actually work at it and make sure that we take the words of the Torah and put them onto our hearts. And that is the opposite of what we experienced with Bilam. In Parshat Balak, there is no break in the whole Parsha because Bilam was not pausing to internalize the words of Hashem. We have to be the opposite. Lesson number 1, when we hear the Torah being read, when we learn Torah, when we go to a shiur, to make sure that we're not just going through the motions of an intellectual exercise, but we actually internalize the words of the Torah that we're learning, make them part of our lives, and try to make actual, tangible, practical changes from what we are learning in the Torah. Lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. Chaf bet gimel vayagra Moav b'nei ha'am ki ravahu. Moav is afraid of Bnei Israel. Why? Ki ravhu. Because they're so numerous. We were so many people in Am Yisrael, and that's what Moab was afraid of. Says the Ketava Kabbalah. Moab ra'a v'shama et kol asher asa Yisrael Amori. They saw everything the Jewish people did to the Amori, all the miracles that have happened along the way, below lakach musar. And they didn't take the lesson from that. Harekama nisim karukan. Many miracles happened here. Below alal datosha kol elu maaseh Hashem. They didn't understand this was hashgacha from Hashem doing this, but rather vayagar Moav lama ki ravhu. It wasn't, oh my goodness, we see open miracles happening in front of our eyes. It was, wow, the Jewish people, a lot of people. So we have to make sure that we do something that we can overcome that. They did not recognize that the success, the victories that the Jewish people were having was because of Hashem. This is a constant theme that we see throughout Parshat Balak of people seeing things that are happening and not learning the lessons from them and actually deflecting it and finding other ways to explain it. We're going to have later on, all of a sudden the donkey is going to start talking to Bilam. We're jumping ahead now a little bit, but it's the same idea. The Kli Yakar says, Hashem gave Bilam the most open message there could be, not to be a Baal Gaiva, to understand that his nevuah doesn't mean anything. This donkey, doesn't have the ability to reach a spiritual level for an angel to speak to it, and yet the angel and Hashem did communicate with him. That's the whole lesson to Bilam was supposed to be, that he is not anything special because Hashem is communicating with him and he should just follow whatever Hashem tells him to do. But nevertheless, Bilam did not take that message in either. Constantly, and we see repeated over and over again in the Parsha. As Bilam is trying to curse the Jewish people and it's not working, why doesn't anybody take a step back and say, this is not working, what's going on over here? We live in a world where Hashem can reveal things openly to people, openly, where there's no other way to really explain it other than the fact that this is Yad Hashem. And nevertheless, we're saying Bilam did something wrong and Balak did something wrong, but it happens in our lives as well. There's open inspiration all around us about not just the existence of Hashem, but the hashgacha of Hashem being involved, the divine providence in our lives. Historically, things that are happening right in front of our eyes, and we take note of it very briefly, but we don't actually internalize. I'll just give you one example. We talk about all the prophecies related to the return to Eretz Yisrael, the ingathering of the exiles, the reflourishing of the land. Just one pasuk in Yeshaya, Ki nicham Hashem Tzion, nicham kochav rateh. When Hashem is comforting Tzion, all the ruins will go away, will be rebuilt. The Midbar will become Ke'eden. The Ravak will become a Gan Hashem. There's going to be great happiness and joy as Hashem brings the Jewish people back from Mashiach. There's going to be a reflourishing of the land of Israel, which we see right in front of our eyes. You see what the land looked like 100 years ago, totally desolate, as the Torah said it would be, and how it's now this Gan Hashem. But do we take that and internalize it? Does that move us, for those of us who are living in Israel, to just really on a daily basis feel the hashgacha of Hashem taking us through this process of Geulah? And those who are not living in Israel, does it spur you to action? Does it make you feel like maybe I should be in Israel? These are things that are happening in front of our eyes, and yet we don't take action. And just like the general brachot that Hashem gives us, and to let that inspire us to be greater over the Hashem. So lesson number 2 from the Parsha is Hashem is constantly sending us messages. Yes, Balak and Moab, they didn't see it. Yes, Bilam, he didn't see it. Let's be people who see it. Let's see the messages that Hashem is sending us in our personal lives and in our national story, and hopefully let it lead us to action. People who see Hashem's messages and do something with it. Lesson number 2. Lesson number 3. Chaf Bet Yud Gimel. Vayomer el Sarei Balak, L'chu el artzachem, ki me'ein Hashem latitei l'halech imachem. Balak says to the messengers, to the ministers of Balak who came, go, I'm not supposed to go with you. And the Orach Chaim says, Miyad Hashem e'ela imach. What was Hashem saying to him when he said, who are these people with you? This is Hashem speaking to Bilam. He says, who are these people? You're a special person. You're a Navi. Who are these lowly people who you've allowed in? And now the Orach Chaim says, and here are the critical words for lesson number 3. Ki yakpid Hashem al kvod Bilam. Hashem is makpid. Hashem cares about the honor and the respect even of Bilam. This person is going to try to destroy the Jewish people with his words. This person is going to try to destroy the people through a plan of enticing them to sin. Later on in the Parsha, Hashem cares about his kavod. So much so, Orach Chaim says, Hashem kills the donkey so that people won't walk around saying, oh, that's the donkey that spoke to Bilam, thereby causing Bilam great shame. And Reb Chaim Shmulevitz points out, Hashem is so concerned about the kavod of Bilam, that teaches us how sensitive we have to be to the kavod of all people. We learn in Pirkei Avot, Dal and Aleph, Ezehu Muchubad, who is a person who truly deserves honor? Hamechabed et habriot, someone who gives honor to all creations. We live in a world where people are so not concerned about the kavod, the dignity of other people. And people will speak and do things, and it just hurts the dignity of other people. But even more than that, are we proactive about building up the dignity of other people? We learn from this story, this is lesson number 3, the importance of constantly being on the lookout to give kavod to other people. Human beings, they need to feel like they're worth something. And one person giving them that feeling can lift up their day, can lift up their week, can give them reason to live because I have some self-worth. So let us be people who internalize this idea. Hashem was concerned about the kavod of Bilam Harasha, who wanted to destroy the Jewish people, but he's one of Hashem's creations, and his kavod matters. Lesson number 3, let's be makpid on the kavod of other people. Certainly not taking away from the kavod of other people, and going even further and trying to always find ways to build up the kavod of people around us. Lesson number 4, Vayomer Elakim El Bilam Lo Telechi Mahem. In Chaf Bet Yud Bet, what did Hashem say to Bilam? Don't go with the people. Don't go with Balak's messengers. But then in Chaf Bet Chaf, it says Vayomer Elakim El Bilam. He says, if they come to you, Kum Lechitam, go with them. First Hashem told him, don't go with them. And then Hashem said, if they come, go with them. Says the Gemara in Masechet Makot Yud Amud Bet. What an important lesson to learn for our lives. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Huna, Amrila, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Elazar, Mina Torah, Mina Avim Ktuvim. We'll find in Torah, Nevi'im and Ktuvim proof for this. B'derech she'adam rotza leilech ba, molichin ba, molichin otam. The way a person wants to go, that's where Hashem will allow you to go. And the proof the Gemara says from the Torah is from this exact pasuk, where first Hashem said, don't go with them, and then Hashem told Bilam to go with them. Hashem did not want Bilam to go with the messengers of Moab. He did not want to go and try to curse the Jewish people. But at a certain point, Hashem gave him the messages. Hashem told him not. When he saw that Bilam really wanted it, Hashem said, okay, I'm going to open that door. Hashem opens the door to the path that we want to go on. This is lesson number 4. We have bechira. We have freedom of choice. Hashem will help us go in the direction that we want to go. We want to do something bad. Hashem will try to inspire us, but at a certain point, that door will open. And you can go down that path like Bilam. If you want to go on the proper path and you choose to do something good, Kadosh Baruch Hu will not only open that door, but he will help you along the way. But derech she'adam rotza leilech, molichin oto. Hashem will guide you and take you down that path. Let's make sure that we recognize the koach of bechira that we have. Hashem will be there. We mentioned before, sending messages, inspiration, but ultimately it's in our hands to decide what we want to do. And we have to recognize that Hashem will allow us to go down that path. Let's work hard on trying to make those correct choices. Lesson number 4. Lesson number 5. Now we're going to dive into the words that Bilam actually says. Bilam tries to curse the Jewish people, but instead Hashem puts words of bracha in his mouth. We're in Chaf Gimel Chaf Aleph. Lo hibit aven b'Yakov, v'lo ra'amel b'Yisrael, Hashem Elokav imo. Rashi says aven here means sin. You will not see a sin amongst the Jewish people. Hashem Elokav imo. Hashem is with them. Says the Gemara in Masechet Sota, Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, Ein Adam Chotei, a person will not sin unless he's overcome by a spirit of just total silliness and foolishness. What is this talking about? It says the Chassam Sofer on our pasuk in Balak. We say, I place Hashem before me always. Someone who knows, who's aware constantly that Hashem is with him, b'chol pinochu poneh, wherever he goes, wherever he does, lo behera chotei. That person is not going to sin. If you truly feel that Hashem is with you always, you are not going to sin. And that's why the Gemara says, if you sin, it's because you've been overcome by a ruach shtut. It makes no sense. Hashem is there. He's right there with you. He sees what you're doing and you sin. Doesn't make any sense. Says the Chassam Sofer, that is the pshat in our pasuk. Lohibit aven b'Yakov, using aven the way Rashi understands that it means sin, avon, b'Yakov. Why? Mipnei she'Hashem Elokav imo. If we would truly live our lives with the recognition that Hashem is with us, b'chol makom, b'chol zman Hashem imo, b'livo machshavto, there is no way you are going to come to do a sin, because Hashem is there. If you truly believe that in a tangible manner, there's no way you're going to do it. That's why my Rosh Hashiva, Yaakov Weinberg, said the mitzvah of emunah is to take your belief and make it into a yediyah, into something you know. The Rambam uses the word yediyah, not emunah. Because if you know that Hashem is there, if you know that Hashem sees everything that you're doing, you will not do anything wrong. And that is the explanation, according to Chatam Sofer, of these words that Bilam is saying to the Jewish people, essentially. You will not see a sin. You will not do anything wrong if Hashem Elokav Imo. That's lesson number 5. Let's work really hard in our lives to have this yediyah, to have this knowledge that Hashem is with us every single moment. And Bezrat Hashem, that'll help us be people who don't stumble, who don't make mistakes, who don't have chait with us at all. Lesson number 6. Chav Gimel Yud Gimel. Again, more words that Bilam said. Efes katsehu tireh, v'kulo lo tireh. You can see the extremities, but you don't see the entire thing. What is this talking about? Says the Kotzker Rebbe. If you look at all the little parts of the Jewish people and all of the little tiny fringes, of course you'll see things that are lacking. People do things that are wrong. But if you look, if you look at the entirety of the Jewish people, al kulo, you will not see anything wrong. When you look at the entire picture, you see a beautiful, beautiful picture of a beautiful people. But if you look at the individual parts of it, then of course you'll see things that are wrong. And that definitely applies to our interactions with individuals as well. When Pirkei Avot Aleph Vav, it says, have you done it kol ha'adam l'kaf zchut, judge the entire person for merit. It doesn't say kol adam, kol ha'adam. Look at the entire person. Every single individual, as the Kotzker Rebbe points out, that you look at, you can find little things that are wrong with them. And then sadly, that's the way we judge people. That's the way we interact with them. But that's wrong. Look at the entire person, just like the entire nation, and then you'll hopefully see something really special. And that's what you should focus on. That's lesson number 6 that Bilam is again telling us. We are very, very judgmental of our people as a whole. We see things that Jews do, and it seems terrible and catastrophic. Look at the whole people. People who are day in and day out doing the most beautiful things and chesed and kindness. And don't get distracted when you look at all of Am Yisrael by the bad things that individuals are doing. Not the katzeh, but look at kulo. But even more importantly, lesson number 6, how we see other people. We were talking about before about kavod habriut. One of the ways to do that is by looking at the entire person, seeing who they are, what their challenges are, seeing them as a neshama, not judging people by individual actions you might know about here or there, but looking at the entirety of the person that's being indamet kol ha'adam l'kaf zchut. Lesson number 6. Lesson number 7, a pasuk that all of us are familiar with, that Bilam says. Many people, the minhag is, as you walk into shul in the morning, as you begin to daven, you say these words, Chav Daled Hey, Matovu Olecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael. How good, how beautiful, how wonderful are your tents, Yaakov, your dwelling places, Yisrael. The Malbim has an incredible insight on this pasuk. He says we have Ohel and we have Mishkan. Ha-Ohel hu Ohel Arai. Right? The tent is temporary dwelling. Ubamidbar shachnu bohalim. What do we live in the desert? We were living in temporary dwellings in those tents. Aval hayu muchanim b'al zikanes el haaretz. But they were getting ready to go into Eretz Yisrael, Melishka b'mishkanot kfuim, and live in permanent dwelling places. Ohel is temporary. Mishkan is a permanent dwelling place. Says the Malbim. Ubilam ra'a kol zeh. He saw this va'amar al ha'olim b'midbar. When it comes to Midbar, what did he say? Matovu ohalecha Yaakov. For the temporary dwelling places, he said, you're great, Yaakov. But for Eretz Yisrael, for Mishkanotecha, he said Yisrael. Says the Malbim, Shem Yisrael Gadol Mishem Yaakov. When you're talking about spiritual levels, the name Yisrael is a much higher spiritual level than the name Yaakov. When they entered Eretz Yisrael, Yubamala Gedola. They're going to enter a whole new level of Ruchaniyut, the Yikru B'Shem Yisrael. And then they're called Yisrael. Unbelievable. Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov. The temporary places for the Jewish people to live in the Midbar, in Galut, but we know that it's not going to last forever. Then you're Yaakov, a lower level of spirituality. But when you enter into Eretz Yisrael and live there, you are elevated to the level of Yisrael because of the Ruchaniyut, because of the spirituality of Eretz Yisrael. This is why, and it's recorded in the Gemara, and the Rambam just puts it very succinctly in Hilchot Malachim, Perek Hey, Gedolei Chachamim hayu menashkim al tchumei Eretz Yisrael menashkim avaneh miskagel aforav. The greatest Chachamim would kiss the earth of Eretz Yisrael and roll in its dirt. Why? Because of the incredible spiritual level they were able to reach in Eretz Yisrael. Amru Chachamim kol hashochin be'Eretz Yisrael v'nosav muchalin. You live in Eretz Yisrael. The level of spirituality is such that it can forgive your sins. La'olam yadar adam be'Eretz Yisrael afilu be'ir sheruba akum v'yador b'chutz la'aretz afilu be'ir sheruba Yisrael. Better to live in Eretz Yisrael, surrounded completely by Ovdei Avodah Zarah, by idolaters, than to live outside of Eretz Yisrael, even in the city of majority of Israel, the spiritual level, majority of Jews, the spiritual level of Eretz Yisrael. And Bilam shares that insight with us. This is lesson number 7. Everyone can do what they want with this message, but to understand that Eretz Yisrael is not just a place that Jews should live in, but it's a place where Jews inherently can reach higher levels of spirituality. Matova ohalecha Yaakov. Outside of Israel, in the temporary places, it's Yaakov. But in Eretz Yisrael, it's Yisrael. That's where the higher level of spirituality exists. Finally, lesson number 9 from the Parsha, just in general, the whole story of the Parsha of Bilam trying to curse the Jewish people, the whole concept that the curse can have power, but instead it's a bracha, and the bracha has power. Says the Gemara, Masechet Megillah, Tedvav Amud Aleph, Amar Belezer, Amar Chanina, La'olam al tihi bracha birchat hedyot kala be'einecha. Do not take a blessing from a simple person lightly. Words that we say in the brachot, they have reality to them, and they can take hold. And the flip side, al tihi kilat hedyot kala be'einecha. And don't take the curse lightly. And the Gemara gives examples of both the bracha of a simple person that took hold and the kala of a simple person that took hold. Not someone who's on some great high spiritual level. Their words have power. Our words, we are all hedyot. Our words have tremendous power. As Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishlei, Perek Yochet, Mavet v'chaim b'yad ha'lashon. Life and death is in the tongue. You can literally kill people with the things that you say, and you can also give the most tremendous bracha with the things that you say. The mouth is the place where the physical and the spiritual comes together, and Hashem has created a world where we have tremendous power. You can destroy people with your words, and you can give people life with your words. You can curse people with your words, and it means something, or you can give somebody bracha with your words and it means something. And lesson number 8 from the Parsha is recognize the power that your words have. Recognize the power that your lashon hara can have in terms of hurting people, destroying people. But just the flip side as well, how a good word can lift someone up and give them life and give them simcha. The entire parsha of Balak and the whole story of Bilam teaches us this idea of lesson number 8 of the power of our words. Let's make sure that we use our words lightly, wisely. See, I just said lightly, and it has power, right? Use our words wisely, and they have tremendous impact and tremendous influence. Let's go over all the lessons we learned from this week's Parsha. Lesson number 1, there is no break in the entire Parshat Balak because Bilam was not stopping and listening to the Torah that Hashem was telling him and trying to internalize it. We're supposed to be the opposite. When we hear Kriyat Torah, when we learn Torah, we go to a Shiur, make sure that we're internalizing what we're learning and make it a part of who we are, as we try to do here in this Shiur. Lesson number 2, all the messages that Hashem was sending, the miracles in the Midbar, the speaking of the Aton, and Bilam, Moab, Balak did nothing with it. They did not hear Hashem's messages and do something with it. Let us make sure that we are people who see the messages that Hashem is sending us in our personal lives, in our national story, and make sure that we do something tangible with what we see happening right in front of our eyes and learn, heed the lessons that Hashem is sharing with us. Lesson number 3, Hashem was makpid on the kavod of Bilam. His donkey is going to be destroyed. He doesn't want him to be meeting with people who are lower levels than he is. If Hashem is makbid on the kavod of Bilam, how we have to make sure that we are concerned about the kavod of everyone around us, not just not to hurt their kavod, but to try to build them up. Lesson number 4. We have Bechira. But derech she'adam rotza leilech molichin oto, Hashem will send you whatever way you want to go. Hashem tried to stop Bilam from going with them, but he wanted to do it. Hashem opens the door. We have Bechira. Hashem will send us messages to try to inspire us. But let's recognize if we want to go down a wrong path, Hashem will allow that door to open. But the reverse is also true. If we want to do good, Hashem will get involved and help us along the way. Let's use our Bechira, the incredible power of Bechira, wisely. Lesson number 4. Lesson number 5. The message that Bilam said, there will not be a sin, Avin b'Yakov, Hashem Elokav imo, as the Chtam Sofer pointed out. If you live your life with the recognition that Hashem is there at all times, you will not sin. Only a ruach shtud, craziness, can come over you to lead you to sin. Let's remember this idea of taking our emunah and making it a yediyah, knowing that Hashem is there at all moments, and then hopefully that will inspire us not to do anything which is wrong. Lesson number 5. Lesson number 6. Efes Katseyu Tira, Kululo Tira, the Kotzker Rebbe. Don't focus on the little individual details in Am Yisrael or other people. See the whole person. See the whole Am. Danet Kol HaAdam L'Kaf Zchut. Don't focus on the little individual points, but the whole being and the whole nation. That's the way we also be makbid on their kavod. Let's see the whole person and see people for who they are in their entirety. Lesson number 6. Lesson number 7. Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. Bilam calls the temporary dwellings of Galut Yaakov, but the permanent dwelling in Eretz Yisrael is Yisrael. The entire concept of the higher level of spirituality that exists in Eretz Yisrael. And then finally, lesson number 8, the power of speech. That's the story of the whole parsha. That you can give a bracha and it takes hold. You give a kala and it takes hold. Life and death is in the mouths, how we speak, how we talk to other people. Let's make sure we use it not just not to be destructive, but let's make sure we use it to lift other people up and give other people life. Let's try to internalize some or all of these 8 lessons from the parsha, make them part of our lives, try to be better people as a result, a greater Ovdei Hashem. Thank you so much for joining us. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.